You probably know that learning how to manage your personal finances is super important if you ever want to achieve financial security or financial freedom. But it's common for people to put off learning personal finances because a lot of times they just don't know where to start. For me, I actually didn't know that there were so many resources out there. And for a long time, I thought I knew enough. But once I started exploring and I realized that there was so much I didn't know about money and building wealth, and I saw that there were a lot of options to learn from, there was really no excuse to not get my financial life together. So in this video, I'm gonna cover 11 places that you can learn personal finance based on your learning style. I found that if you can find resources that cater to your learning style, not only will you learn a lot about money and building wealth, but it might even end up being fun. So the learning styles I'm going to cover are visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. These four are sometimes known as VARC, but I will be digging into each one later on in the video. Now, because I really want you to succeed with money, I'm going to cover 2 bonus tips that will help you prioritize your financial education. So, if you watch through this entire video of examples on where you can learn personal finance, and you take those 2 bonus tips I'm going to give you at the end, you will 100% become more financially literate and on the path towards financial security between now and, let's say, 6 months from now. You will see some change. For those new here, hello and welcome. My name is Lissa Prudencio. I'm a personal finance expert, an accredited financial counselor, and I am the co-host of NetNet, which is my new podcast that empowers you to make smart financial decisions. So make sure you check it out and let me know what you think. All right, disclaimer before we get into the meat of the video. I am going to cover 11 places that you can learn personal finance based on your learning style. But I want you to know that ultimately, you're probably going to have to learn from a mix of places. And beyond that, even though I'm going to give you some concrete examples of places you can learn, I want you to know that there are so many resources out there, way more than 11 and way more than I'm mentioning in this video. What I hope is that these on this list spark your interest and maybe motivate you to do more research. There are a lot of voices, a lot of approaches, and so many forms of media and niches that are tailored to different types of people and different types of financial situations. A quick example is I just went to a conference last week and I met a lot of really cool women in the personal finance space. One woman that I met in particular was named Elaine, and she is known on Instagram as Nurse Who Invests. And she specifically helps nurses who want to learn how to invest because there are some nuances about being a nurse. So that's just a little bonus resource, but I'm using it as an example to show you that there are people out there who want to help you with your finances, and they come from all different walks of life. So let's jump into that first category, which is visual learners. You probably know already if you're a visual learner, but this is for people who tend to remember concepts and understand concepts better if they can see them. So whether that is a diagram, a chart, a drawing, or even a simple color coding, your brain probably processes information better in this format where there is some visual element to it. The downside for visual learners is sometimes it's hard to find good visual aids and resources that don't also require you to have to read or listen as well. The upside is that when you do find a really good teacher or a resource that can teach you with visuals, I think that you can learn concepts, especially financial ones, a lot more quickly. I'm a visual learner myself, so I know that when I have the right diagrams, the right person teaching, it's so much easier to grasp the information. So number 1, the first resource on the list is Khan Academy. So Khan Academy is a free place online where you can learn actually a whole bunch of different topics, not just related to finance. But there is a whole personal finance section on this website under life skills. Now there's actually an older section on Khan Academy that covers personal finance, which I thought had a lot of visuals and drawings and diagrams to teach the lessons. I think it's more so than the newer version, but there is a newer financial literacy section that also is a great place to learn for a beginner. Number 2, another place for visual learners to learn is YouTube. Now, the key for you visual learners is not just finding any old YouTuber. Specifically, try to find the ones that use slides or drawings or animations, people that really try to help you understand concepts better with visuals. Like for me personally, I use drawings and stuff once in a while in my videos, but the only reason I haven't consistently done it in every single video is because I don't have the operations yet. I don't have a full-time animator on my team, and there are some things that just take a lot more time to make sure you have a good visual aid. But here are some suggestions of YouTube channels that do use more visual aids than others. The Money Guy Show, they tend to use slides and other visual aids pretty often. Marco of Whiteboard Finance, he uses his whiteboard a lot. I noticed that he uses slides a lot in his more recent videos, but if you watch his older videos, you'll see that he's out there drawing diagrams and using his whiteboard to explain concepts better. All right, resource number 3 for visual learners, produced shows or documentaries. So I alluded to why I don't do full-on animations in my own videos, at least not yet, and that's because sometimes it requires a bigger budget. So there are a few personal finance shows that have higher production quality, I guess, compared to YouTube, and those might help you understand money better if you are a visual learner. Here are a few examples that are on Netflix. I'm not sure about other places, but definitely if you're based in the US, these are some shows that you can check out. Money Explained, How to Get Rich by Ramit Sethi, and Get Smart with Money, which features a couple of different creators such as Tiffany Aliche, the Budgetnista, Paula Pant, and Mr. Money Mustache. Okay, let's move on to the next learning style, which is auditory. So auditory learners are people who learn most effectively by hearing and listening. So you're probably an auditory learner if you like to listen and even have conversations with people. Typically, when it's just visual aids or written text, it's harder for you to grasp that information. You prefer to have an auditory component. So if it's not obvious, number 4, podcasts. I think podcasts are a great way for you to learn personal finance, and on top of that, you can learn on the go. So you might have a commute on a train or in a car or even walking, and you can listen and learn personal finance while you're on the go. And the best part about podcasts is there's a wide range of information. Like some podcasts focus a lot on technical information, while some are more storytelling or just conversations between people. So for beginners to personal finance, here are a couple of recommendations: Brown Ambition, NerdWallet's Smart Money, Money Confidential, and Afford Anything. And if you want more recommendations that include podcasts specifically for women of color, check out my video, 38 Money Resources for Women of Color. Number 5, another place to learn, audiobooks. So I'm going to talk about books in the next section when I talk about the reading and writing learning style, but just know that the audiobook version of a lot of those personal finance books are also a great resource, especially if you hate reading and you just learn better through listening. Now, the key here is you have to be a little bit choosy, because I don't think all books are great in audio form. Like if someone just reads out the book, it's not that great just because it's an audiobook. So the pro tip that I have is try to find personal finance books that are actually narrated by the author of the book. I personally think that this gives it a chance of being higher quality because that book is that author's baby, right? They're gonna want to make it really good. So they're gonna want to adapt their book into a great audiobook version for their listeners. Some examples include Rich AF by Vivian Tu and Money Out Loud by Berna Anat. Both of those are narrated by the author and I think are great audiobooks for people starting out in personal finance. Another one for auditory learners, and this is kind of a cheat. It's similar to the category for visual learners, but YouTube. So I think that YouTube or other long form video are great options, especially if you're an auditory learner. Why is that? Well, low-key, a lot of personal finance experts, they literally just talk to the screen like I'm doing right now. So a lot of times you don't even have to be watching the video visually. Because I'm a visual learner, I love watching creators who have graphics and designs and animations. But a lot of the time you'll see that personal finance experts are usually just talking to the screen, in which case they should still be helpful to you if you're an auditory learner. All right, let's move on to the third learning style, which is reading and writing. So if you have a reading and writing learning style, you probably have a preference for learning through written information, through text. And oftentimes it's because you might like learning at your own pace, right? You can reread something if you need to, you can go back to it, you can skip around. Typically, your reading comprehension is great, and you just tend to recall things better when you see it written down. So, number 7 on this list of places to learn, books. I mentioned it earlier with the audiobooks, but there are tons of personal finance books that you can choose from. My tip is to start with 1 to 2 personal finance books and go from there. If you want some book recommendations, make sure you check out my video up here. All right, number 8, blogs. There are a lot of online blogs if you prefer to read articles instead of whole books. So you can find online blogs from creators, from financial companies, or even the government. For example, there are creators like Clever Girl Finance who have a ton of financial blog articles on their website. Financial companies like Ally Bank have blogs. Theirs is called Conversationally, with ally as a play of words at the end of it, but most financial companies actually have some form of articles on their websites because it helps with SEO. But the thing is, because they are financial companies that have a big brand that they have to uphold, I do find that a lot of their educational articles are very trustworthy. But if you truly want trustworthy, you can refer to government websites. So for example, in the United States, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has a lot of consumer education information on their website that you can learn from. All right, number 9, moving along our list, newsletters. This is also great for people who have a reading and writing learning style. A lot of companies or creators have newsletters where they send out education and information. Now, you got to keep in mind that a lot of people use newsletters as marketing tools. Email marketing is very important for a lot of businesses. So they might give you education and information, and then every so often they'll hit you with something that they're selling or something that they want you to do. There's nothing wrong with that. I personally do this as I run my own business because it is a marketing technique. But all I'm saying is if a newsletter is free, keep it in mind, but you can still get tons of useful information and education on free newsletters. And if you want other options, there are paid newsletters as well. So some examples of financial newsletters are The Behavior Gap by Carl Richards or Her Money from Jean Chatzky. All right, before we hit the last learning style, the kinesthetic learning style, quick plug, if you aren't following me already, make sure you subscribe. And if you're getting anything out of this video, make sure you hit the like button. It'll help me reach more people. And of course, as always, I appreciate it. All right, last section, kinesthetic learners. Kinesthetic learners are people who learn best through movement and physical activity. So typically you thrive with learning if you're doing something, if you're touching something, or if you're experiencing something firsthand yourself. Now, a big downside of the kinesthetic method, you probably will need to do a mix of learning with other styles of learning. For example, you watch a video lesson first, and then maybe there's an activity that's related to it. The upside of kinesthetic learning is if you can find those creative ways to learn about financial topics, it's not just effective, but it's usually more fun than the other ways of learning. So, number 10 on the list, speaking of fun, gamify your finances. I love a good game or competition. So you might be able to learn to budget better if you use cash envelopes or by simply having a whiteboard that tracks your saving progress every month. Maybe every time you hit a target, you get to check off a box or get a gold star or do something that lets you feel like you are actually experiencing something. I actually know a financial planner who uses these things called budgeting blocks. It allows her to give her clients a kinesthetic activity of learning how to budget. But there are other ways to learn. You can look up worksheets or other activities like board games that can help you learn finances. All right, last but not least, number 11 on the list, if you are a kinesthetic learner, you might benefit from a financial coach. Now, don't get me wrong, not all financial coaches are going to offer some kinesthetic activities, but I do think that if you learn best through a kinesthetic style, because there are limited things you can do, it might help to have a coach who can be creative in the way that they teach you different concepts. Maybe they have you write stuff on paper or a whiteboard. Maybe they have you use tools like fake money. I think the hardest part about this would be finding a coach that does use kinesthetic techniques and specializes in it, but I just want you to know it's an option. You don't have to go it alone. If this is your learning style and you learn best in this way, then you can find a professional to help you. So that is the list of 11 ways to learn based on your learning style, but I didn't forget, I said I was going to have 2 bonus tips that would help you make progress towards financial literacy and, of course, financial security. Tip number 1, set a recurring money date on your calendar. So maybe once every 2 weeks, you have 30 minutes or an hour set aside on your calendar to learn about personal finance. Now, you can learn it in between. Like I said, if you listen to podcasts, if you're an auditory learner, you can listen on the go. But the goal of having a money date on your calendar is to make sure that you do it regularly and you don't just end up going like 2, 3, 4 months without learning anything new. And tip number 2, get an accountability buddy, or even better, you can start a mastermind group. So accountability is a huge way that you can make sure you're making progress towards your financial goals, but that also applies to your financial literacy. So if you have a friend who wants to also learn about finance, maybe you guys set up a book club, or maybe you recommend podcasts to each other and you guys can at least talk about the episodes that you listen to. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there are now no excuses to not learn about personal finances. The more you learn, the more you'll be able to build wealth. I hope this was helpful. Until next time, peace out.